Welcome Primary 5, with you is Miss Noor Abdurrahman, and today we are going to start lesson number 1 on concept 3 on unit 1. So are you ready to start? Let's go. Okay, today we are going to talk about what is affecting the ecosystem and the food web inside the ecosystem. Number 1, the climate change. Climate change means weather change. When the climate change, this is affects the ecosystem and the food web inside the ecosystem. Number 2, the pollution. The pollution of air, the pollution of water, the pollution of soil, all of sources of pollution, it's causing a really bad effect on the ecosystem. Number 3, the human activities. The human make a lot of bad activities which also affect the ecosystem and the food web inside the ecosystem. So the ecosystem can get bad affected by climate change, by pollution, or human activities. Let's start with pollution. What's the pollution? It's the harms that happen to the air and to the water and to the soil by throwing substances harm the living organism inside this ecosystem, like water pollution. When we are throwing substance harm the living organism in the water, this is a water pollution. When you are throwing a garbage on the soil, this is soil pollution. When we are making a smoke or produce a smoke of factories and cars on the air, this is air pollution. So the harms that happen to the water or soil or air, this is called pollution. Again, what's the meaning of pollution? Harms happen to the air, water, and soil by throwing substances harming the living organisms. Okay, what happened if the plants or the producers disappeared from the ecosystem? That means that there is no plant on the ecosystem. What will happen to the consumers? The consumers will not find the food, so they will move to another place searching for food. So if there is no plants, the consumers will move into another place searching for food. Okay, number 2, what will happen if just one species of consumers in the ecosystem increase? What's the meaning of that? One species of consumers like rabbit. If the rabbit increase in the ecosystem, what will happen? All the rabbits will eat all the grass. So the food and shelter will disappear. So what will happen to all the rabbits? They will not find food, they will not find a shelter, so they will die. So if a number of only one species of consumer increase, what will happen? They will finish all the food and shelter, so they will die. If the food and the shelter disappeared, so the animal will die. Okay, now let's talk about the human activities which make a bad effect on the marine habitat or marine environment. Marine habitat means the water habitat. Okay, what is the human bad activities on water? Number 1, overfishing. Overfishing. Number 2, water pollution. Water pollution. Okay, number 1, what's the meaning of overfishing? Overfishing means when the humans or fishers catch many fish from rivers, from sea, from oceans. Okay, what will happen if we catch a lot and a lot of fish? What will happen? We are destroying and damaging the food web inside the water. Because when we are taking a lot of fish, maybe some types of fish will disappear, and we are destroying and damaging the food web inside the marine environment or inside the water. So, what's the meaning of overfishing? When the human catch many fish. When the human catch many fish, this is called overfishing, and it has a really bad effect on the marine environment. Number 2, the water pollution. The human also throwing the waste materials on river, on sea, and ocean, and this is causing a water pollution, which is also has a bad effect on the food web in the ecosystem. So the human can damage the marine environment by overfishing and water pollution. Okay, if there are some places has no water pollution, of course. Let's talk now about a very beautiful place which is called Palau Island. It's called what? Palau Island. In Palau Island, the people protect the marine environment by putting some rules. How? Okay, in Palau Island, the people are protecting the marine environment by controlling the activities of the human. How they control the activities of humans? Okay, number one, they are avoiding throwing waste materials in water. They are never throwing any waste materials on water in Palau Island. It's not allowed. So they have no water pollution. Number two, the fishers in Palau Island. The fishers must not overfishing the coral reefs to conserve the marine environment. What is the coral reefs? Look into this picture. This is the coral reefs. The coral reefs is a shelter and home for a many fish inside the water. So they cannot and they are not allowed to make any overfishing in the coral reefs. So that's also protecting the marine environment and the marine animals inside the sea. So in Palau Island, they are avoid throwing waste materials in water and they are not making overfishing for the coral reefs. Okay, when the ecosystem is changing, the food web in the ecosystem will change too. How? The relationship between the organisms or the animals in the ecosystem is really important to help to make the ecosystem balanced. So there is a relationship between all the living organisms in the ecosystem and it's called a food web and the food web makes the ecosystem balance. Okay, what will happen if we take or remove just a one organism from the ecosystem? What will happen to the ecosystem? The ecosystem will change and it will destroy it. Yani if we take the grass from the ecosystem, if we remove the grass, the ecosystem will be balanced? No, the ecosystem will change and it will destroy it. Okay, if we take the insects from the ecosystem will be balanced? No, it will destroy it. So the relationship and the food web on the ecosystem help the ecosystem to make it balanced. Okay, now let's talk about the effects of ecosystem changes on the food web. Number one, what will happen if there is a gentle rain in the desert? Gentle rain meaning a normal or a slow rain. What will happen to the desert? It will harm or it will improve? Of course it will improve. Improved mean it's become better, it's become good. So, if there is a gentle rain on the desert ecosystem will improve. Why it will improve? Because when the rainwater feed the plants need water. So, when the rainwater feed the plants will feed the other organisms. So, what will happen to the desert? It will improve. So, the gentle rain causing the desert to improved. Okay, number two, the heavy rain on the desert. It's not gentle rain, it's a heavy rain. What will happen if there is a heavy rain on the desert? The desert will improve or destroy it. The desert will destroy it and be harmed. How does it harm or why it is harmed? Because the heavy water rain will make a flood. Will make what? A flood. Do you know what's the flood? When the water coming over the land, this is called a flood. Okay, and when the flood is happened, the ecosystem will be destroyed. So the heavy rain is harming the ecosystem. The heavy rain harming the ecosystem. Number three, what will happen if there is a drought and all the grass is died? Okay, if all the grass die and there is a drought on the ecosystem, what will happen? The ecosystem and the food web will destroy it because when there is no grass, when the plant die, what will happen to the other organisms? They also will die. So if there is a drought and the grass die, the food web will destroy it. Number four, what will happen if there are many top predators on the food web? Do you remember what's the top predators? Do you remember what's the meaning of predator? They are the animals which are eating and hunting the other organisms. They are called top predators. And we call them top predators because they are on the top of the food chain. They are on the top because they are eating all the animals which is under the food chain. So the top predators, they are the predators that exist at the top of the food chain, like the tiger, like the lion, like the crocodile. Okay, what will happen if there are many top predators on the food web? What will happen if there is a lot of top predators? What will happen to the other organism on the food web? They will harmed. Why? Because the top predators, they are many and they have a large number, so they will eat all the organisms on the ecosystem and the ecosystem will get harmed. So if there is a gentle rain on the desert will improve. If there is a heavy rain on the desert, it's causing a flood which is harming the desert. If there is a drought on the ecosystem, the food web and the ecosystem will destroy it. And if there are many top predators, also the organisms on the ecosystem will be harmed. Now, the last thing, let's talk about the marine food web. What is the marine food web under the water? Okay, number one, let's start by producers. The first thing on any food web or any food chain is the producers. Where is the producers here? This is the producers. It's called algae. It's called what? Algae. Algae. The algae, they are plants or they are a type of producers underwater and they are making photosynthesis. So they are producers and they are the first thing on the food web. Okay, who is eating algae on the marine food web? Number one, the clam. The clam is a primary consumers which eating the algae. Number two, zooplankton. Zooplankton. The zooplanktons, they are a very small organisms and we cannot see it by our eyes. We can see it only by the microscope. They are very tiny and small organisms and they are feeding on the algae. Number three, sea urchin. Sea urchin. The sea urchin also, they are eating the algae. So we have three primary consumers eating algae: clam, clam, zooplankton, zooplankton, sea urchin, sea urchin. Okay, this is the three animals or the three primary consumers which feeding on algae. Okay, who is eating the clam? The secondary consumer which eating the clam is the sea star. So the sea star eating a clam. The sea star eating a clam. Okay, who is the secondary consumer which eating the zooplankton? It is the coral. Do you know the coral? The coral is feeding on zooplankton, so it's a secondary consumer. The coral eating the zooplankton. Okay, who is eating the sea urchin? The sea urchin can be eaten by a fish called parrotfish. Parrotfish. So the parrotfish is a secondary consumer which eating the sea urchin. Okay, so the clam can be eaten by sea star. The zooplankton can be eaten by corals. The sea urchin can be eaten by parrotfish. Parrotfish. Okay, now who is eating the corals? Who is eating the corals? We have a two fish can we have a two or a three fish can eat the coral, which is butterfly fish, butterfly fish, triggerfish, triggerfish, and the parrotfish, the parrotfish. So the parrotfish can feed on sea urchin or coral. So the triggerfish, butterfly fish, and parrotfish can eating coral. And the top predator in this food web, it will be the shark. The shark is the top predator and it is the tertiary consumers which is feeding in all the three fish. It can eat the parrotfish, triggerfish, and butterfly fish, and also it can eat the sea star. So this is the marine food web. Number one, we can start with the producers, which is algae. The algae, who is eating the algae? Clam, zooplankton, sea ocean. Who's eating the clam? The sea star. Who's eating the zooplankton? Coral. Who's eating the sea ocean? The parrotfish. Okay. Who's eating the coral? Butterfly fish, triggerfish, parrotfish. And who is eating the three fishes? The three fish and the sea star is the shark. With you was Miss Noor Abdurrahman, and thank you for listening.